Viewers, welcome back to the Self-Made Auto Channel. That's a 2011 Subaru. It's the Outback. It's got the big 2.5. It's got about $1.40 on the clock. Guy has not done the timing belt and water pump job yet. I think we've probably done a video on one of these. I'm sure we probably have, but this is what we got to work on this morning, and I said the next car I'm bringing in, I'm making a video for the people. Here we are. And I'm hoping this little guy's going to cooperate with us. I see the lower radiator hose there, the hose clamps on it are quite rusty and swole, and that can usually mean that the lower bolts on the timing cover are rusty and swole, and they can be kind of a pisser to take off. Well, let's do what we gotta do, folks. Let's get started. I think what I'll do to try to make it a little more, at least it's kind of a silly job trying to record these, can be a little difficult. I think I'm gonna take and pull the fans out where I ordinarily wouldn't, just to do a timing belt. So I think I'll do that. It's just a couple bolts on those if they want to cooperate. Could be making a mountain out of a molehill here. So let's get started. Give her a little spritz there to give it some hope on these fan screws. That one was pretty crusty. Get a sucker to pop up there. I'll wiggle this thing out of the way. Same thing here, we'll get this little guy out of our way. We'll mark our belt this side out because we're going to be reusing the serpentine belt. This way here it's less likely to squeal and carry on. I always just put them on the same direction that they were. Might be a waste of time, but might not. Spritz down these fan bolts. You gotta be real careful with these things, boy. They won't twist and just snap off. They'll break off the top of the radiator here where that square nut is captured inside this little piece of plastic. You go to turn it, it can snap. Next thing you know, you got a broken radiator. We'll get the coolant jug out. You get it right here. I don't know if you guys can see. You probably can't. I think I can do it one-handed, but I can show you. You push this little tab in right here, and then you push the jug out. Hey, look at that. We did do it one-handed. Can't believe it. And that's it. That's all you need to do. Besides unhook your hose, like so, and then she'll slip right out. Let's get these out of here before the coil completely dissolves them. Ooh, that is not feeling good, my guy. Well, that one feels great. This one, not so great. I told you these won't snap off. This one might. Well, I thought that coil was gonna just dissolve that bolt, but it seems it's not. This one's feeling okay. And this one's feeling okay. We're gonna have to work this one a little bit. I'll show you a little tip to keep it from breaking off that radiator. So just take your needle nose vice grips. It's not a really super slick trick, but don't crush it. But you have to put enough pressure on it that you'll keep that square nut from trying to spin in there. And then this gives you something to hold against the radiator, you know what I mean? Know what I mean, dude? So this one's coming out pretty easy, but you can see it's kind of flimsy, and that captured nut will spin around in there and break the radiator. That last little bit, it doesn't want to go through there. There's no way to, clean the end of the nut, if you will. We can just keep douching it with the coil, which at this point it's pretty well coiled up. Just keep working it, I guess. can't seem to keep my socket on things today. There goes the nut. She just spun in the housing. Not cool, dude. Because now we got to see if we can get it to spin back the other way. But once they spin, it can be a real pain because they take a little plastic with them. I think the best possible solution in a scenario like this is because we only have one bolt that won't come out. Ultimately, we don't want to break this entire tang, this tab here that sticks off the radiator. But what we can do is we can very gingerly just nip the top of it, okay, just like that. And then what that'll do, that should allow this bolt to slide straight up and out, in theory. Then we can get it out, or we can touch it with our mitts. Oh, we got some blood coming through the glove. We should be able to wiggle that straight up and out. I'm thinking, it's not quite 6mm gap there. Get this thing to wiggle straight up and out, then we can get the nut off the bolt. We'll still be able to stick it back in there, just like so. So being that we have it loose, and this won't cause any, any damage to the radiator. Most people would probably never even notice it, but we'll be able to loosen this up now, put a little heat on it, and then we'll be able to stick that square capture nut right back down in there. It's a little tight because the slot we cut isn't quite as big as our bolt. But no harm, no foul, doesn't hurt the radiator, and we can still get our fan assemblies out. Let's see if we can't push this hose. I don't know if we can get it out without popping the hose off first or not. Yeah, we can. So your plugger for this fan is right down in the lower right hand corner. That's for that fan, and this fan's down here on the side also. But this fan, you have to reach down. You'll feel the two transmission lines if it's automatic. You'll feel the lines. I'll show you where they hook into it. You can just reach down and flick them out. Same thing with the connector here. I'm going to move the fan over a little bit, see if I can't reach the connector. Get that undone. I'll show you what they look like, because if you've never done one, you might not be familiar. Well, we used to do lots of Subaru head gaskets, but your training lines go into this groove right here. You just got to reach down and pop them out, and then your connector is right there on the bottom left-hand corner. And I'll show you what that looks like down there in the hole. The two training lines sit just like this. They click right into the fan. And here is your connector for that one, and your connector for the one on the passenger side. 28" by 14" piece of cardboard. Life hack for you. This will save you some heartache and crying, and wondering why didn't I just do this. Take your little piece of cardboard. We're gonna stick her in here. Got a little crazy on my cutting. If you're buying an Aisin Timing Belt Kit, the box is conveniently the correct size. I didn't use it because I didn't want to tear my box up. And we have lots of extra cardboard around this joint. And then you have to use green painter's tape. You can use blue if you got it, or manila. And that's going to keep you from accidentally slipping and having to buy yourself a radiator. Ask me how I know how, and I'll tell you about a guy I know. So at this point we need to drain the radiator. I don't know if it has a peacock on it. I don't see one right off. What we'll do, the lower clamp on this is super rusty. We're going to cut that little guy loose. We're going to get a catch pan. That way we can get this hose out of the way. We're going to have to replace those lower hose clamps for our customer anyways, before they blow out. And then we're going to get the crank pulley off, this front engine bracket, what are we going to call it, this mount bracket. We'll get that out of the way. We'll whip our timing covers off, and then we're almost done. Let's see if we can do this with the camera in the way. Let's get that clamp. We'll move her up here where we can get to it a little bit easier. See if we can reach in here, give it a squeeze. Clamp feels pretty weak. It's lost all of its spring. It may have just broke actually. There's literally no spring tension to it at all. I don't think it's got enough room to move in. But if we can get the hose to crack loose, let me get a hose pick. You can see where it's pretty crusty. There we go. Start kind of working that around a little. Maybe now we can just grab it. There we go. Yes, sir. Okay. Now we can unclamp our hose. Make sure your bucket's ready. There we go. Perfect. Not a lot of coolant came out of that. There is a jiggle pin in the thermostat, so it'll slowly sit there and leak out. We're going to remove our upper hose where we're letting that PP down there. Slide that one down. Slide this one up. See if you can spin it. That one you can. The aluminum side is usually the difficult side. So we're going to hose pick under this. Come on, man. Let me get a different hose pick. This one's kind of difficult to use. This is my favorite. This one gives you a little more leverage, a little better control. Shorter pick too, so you don't have to worry about poking the hose as easily. There we go. And all you're doing with the pick, if you're hose picking, keep your pick pointed towards, the inlet or the outlet, towards whatever's not the hose. And all you're doing is breaking the seal. So if this is in here and your hose pick in there, you get your pick in there, you're just working it around like this, just going around that lip. And then you just, once you break that bond, then you can wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. There it is. Then you're going to want to undo both of your O2 sensors. Or one of them is probably an AFR sensor. Nope, they're both oxygen sensors on this little fella. And that's it. And before anybody comments, yes, both of those braided ground straps that go to the head are both broken, missing. They've likely been gone for many, many years, and no, I'm not replacing them. We're gonna come in with a low profile Uggy Duggy, your classic 1822 by Astro Tools. 20 some odd millimeters, 22 millimeters. Give her one of those. Take out your crank bolt. And in a perfect world, we can just flex it, wiggle. If you're going to do this next trick, don't be stupid, because you're going to be prying against a plastic cover. But when you have arthritic fingers and they start to hurt after a few minutes of tweaking, I like to stick a couple screwdrivers back here and just very gingerly give it some of those. I call it the 2-finger twisters. Call it what you want. And there you go. Sometimes the crank pulley, you can see this one was just starting to get a little bit of rust in there. Sometimes they can be bonded, in which case you have to use extreme measures. In this case we did not. But again, if you're using screwdrivers back here, use your noodle. We're coming in with the old school Ingersoll Rand. It's the hammerhead. First of its kind. Revolutionary. Had this thing for years. Great little tool when it came out. Still a great tool. Low profile, super powerful. Stick this to the side. That thing will actually take a wheel nut off a car. Put a 19 mil socket on it, wheel nut that's been torqued to 100 foot-pounds. Take it right off. I got that bad boy back. Gosh, I think it was still called Parts America. Because I remember when the delivery guy, his name was Carl, he's an old school car guy. When he brought it here, he's like, oh, what's this, you know, because I bought it from them. And I showed him, and we got it out. We took a wheel nut off a car. He was super impressed, as was I. But I remember that. It had to be around that time, because it was around the same time I started YouTube, which was in 2014. And the only reason I remember that, not to go too deep into story time, is my buddy Jake from Jerkwater, South Carolina. He had one of these, and it broke. The whole head came apart, all the guts fell out. He tried to get a hold of IR, they wouldn't help him, so he made a YouTube video. And then all of a sudden they helped him, and he didn't even have really a YouTube channel, but the video got some traction. And I was like, wow, YouTube's a pretty powerful tool, huh? Anyhow, that's about the time I bought one, because I was like, well, it seemed to be, even though it broke, it seemed like a pretty cool tool. So now we're gonna work on the timing covers. There's 2 of them. This one should have 3 bolts in it. That bolt doesn't feel real great. So the 3 bolts here on the end are different than the bolts you're going to take out of the rest of the cover, except for one. So we're going to work this one here a little bit. We should probably ought to give this one a handy. This process could take a while because it could be similar to what we ran into up here, which can be slightly frustrating, but take your time and you might not break stuff. Okay, feels good now. All right, so there's those 3. So there's 3 bolts that look like that. There's going to be one more that looks like that on the main timing cover, but the 3 that go here on the end look like that. So, and then there's this timing cover here. And then basically we're just going to feel our way along. These are going to be some shouldered bolts. They look entirely different, so they have a shoulder on them, so you can't really over tighten them. Or when they're tight, they're tight. You'll figure it out. But there's one down here near the bottom that's going to be like the bolt we took out over there. And that's this one here, okay? You can't really mix it up, just FYI. The bottom ones can be quite crusty, where the heads almost disappear on them. So, you know, use your head a little bit on those. If you round the head off and the head's not very big, they can be kind of a pain. This one here wasn't feeling great, so I'm going to try to crack it loose by hand. Yachty. There's that. I think that's all of them. It'll let you know if it's not. That one was pretty, this one's pretty rusted. You can see the top, that one's pretty rounded. But we still got it. didn't even see that side. I always have one. Oh, she got us. Twisted. There we go. Drop it right in the antifreeze bucket. Perfect. Then there's the gasket that goes with it that sometimes sticks. Get that off. And that's what this little guy looks like. Hopefully you guys can see that. So stick our gasket back on here. If your Subaru leaks a lot of oil, like what one doesn't, sometimes this gasket can be swole and you'll have to replace it. But this one looks pretty dang good. The problem is over here, well, this oil's on the head. Usually these Subarus, you know, if customer's good about it, they're keeping them full of oil. And they're always dumping it all over this side of the head. So this cover, or this gasket here, is a little bit swole. So this one's a little bit too long to fit back on there. I'll show you a free tip here for you. What to do in this case, because we don't have a new gasket and we're not gonna wait days to get one. You just come out here and chop it off. You snip it like that. And then you snip it like this. You take about a 1/4 inch out of it, or it's probably closer to like 10, 11 millimeters out of it. And that's it. And if you feel so inclined to do so, you can put a little dab of super glue on there and you can touch those two back together. This does nothing more than seal out dust. It doesn't hold back any liquid. So if that bothers you, look away, I guess. Total number of bolts so you know you're doing the job right. This style bolt, whatever we have, -1. No, +1. So we have 4 of that style, and we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, +1. So we have 10 of the shouldered bolts and 4 of the regular ones. We need to line up our timing marks. We need to spin the engine over. So I'm just going to use the axle nut here to take up some space, so we don't have to thread our crank bolt in all the way. And then we're going to grab a 22 mm wrench. And we're just very slowly, this should take this, I'm going to start turning this over. Let me make darn tootin' I'm not screwing anything up here. I have a smaller axle nut socket I usually use, but this is just the one I grabbed. There we go. So we're going to spin it over very slowly. We're going to watch our timing marks here on the cam. Right now, they're about 180 degrees off from where they need to be. Here's the other mark on this one. We want it to be up in this notch here, and with the notch here on the head, back in here. Okay, I'll show you, once we get there I'll show you. It'll make more sense. The spark plugs are still in the engine, so I'm going to turn it over real slow. Just instead of trying to fight it past the compression, that's all. You won't hurt anything. If you turn it fast, you're not going to hurt anything. It's just when you come up on a compression stroke, it's easier if you go a little bit slower. And then we'll see the mark here on our crank. That'll start coming up. Should be coming up here pretty soon. There it is. So there's our mark on the crankshaft. Let's enhance. So it's that slot on the trigger wheel of the crank, for the crank sensor there. You can see that little slot. That's going to line up with this. I think there's a slot right here in this where the crank sensor tightens down. I could be wrong. Maybe it's in a little bit further. I don't know. I don't really use the timing marks on Subarus. I use the marks on the belt. So we're going to call that close enough. This notch right here on the left side of my wrench is lined up with this notch right here. We're pretty close to it. Same thing here. This notch with the white paint mark lines up with the little crack in the head over there on the left side of my wrench. And then, yeah, the notch is right there on the left side of my wrench. It's underneath, oops, you guys can't see, it's underneath the crank sensor here on the, was it the oil pump housing or whatever. Like I say, we'll line that up a little bit. So there, your marks are perfect to that point. Everything looks pretty good, but like I say, I don't usually use the marks, you know, on the cams and stuff, because the belt comes marked. You line up your belt, pull the pin, you're out of here. What we'll do is we'll try to do this where everybody can see. I'm not real sure of the textbook procedure here, folks. If you're looking for textbook, probably find a textbook. I don't know. I don't know how to say it. Sorry to bump you. So I'm going to peel off the lower idler pulley. It takes a little tension off the old belt. We'll zing off the upper. Stick that one to the side. We'll zing off our tensioner. Wash it on the inside of this one, so be careful you don't lose it. You'll see, hopefully it stayed. Usually there's an O-ring on it. Hey, it's that guy. And there is, so make sure you don't lose this washer. Your washer, but you can see it's oil. Tension, always throw your tensioner away. That's very important. Get our lower idler. We'll stick this one to the side. And at this point, we should be able to take our belt off. Throw that to the side. And here comes the very lovely Mrs. O.
Howdy.
What's up? You need to talk to me?
There's a phone call. Do you want to take it or are you going to call back?
Stand by, folks. Hey. Thanks for everything you do.
What?
I said thanks for everything you do.
Oh, you're welcome.
You're pretty wonderful.
I appreciate you.
Appreciate you more. Once all that stuff's out of your way, folks, we need to get the water pump out of our way. And we're going to take the thermostat housing off from it first, hopefully. Get that bolt there. That bolt there. So we'll get both of them. Take and pop that baby off. Make sure you get a new thermostat, and then also make sure you clean the crud off this housing. Just wire wheel it on the wire wheel over on your bench grinder, and that'll clean that right up. And then stick that to the side. And there's a few bolts in these. There's one. There's two. I think there's another one down here somewhere, isn't there? Where are you, fella? Yep, there it is. I knew there was one in there somewhere. There's that one. One in there. One right there. One right there. I think that's it. There they are. So they come out pretty easy. Sometimes they can get a little corrosion on them and tend to get a little stuck. Like this one here has some corrosion on it. If that's the case, take your time. Sometimes I'll throw a little heat on it, then let it cool back down. It kind of breaks that corrosion free, and then you can spin them right out of there. Let's see, I need to get a magnet. There it is. We already got that one. So we have 2, 4, 6 bolts. And then we have the hose down here on the bottom. Let's see if we can't just give that a classic reach over. Spin that to the side where we can actually get it. We'll squeeze it down, push it down. Whoa. Let's see if we can't get that hose off there. Work up in here with our pick. It's pretty snug. So we'll just try to get that tip in there. Keep it pointed into the pump. Once you get up in the hose, oops, the whole pump cracked loose. Should have done this before we took the bolts out, but there we go. I think I worked that hose about 3/4 of the way around, so now we'll be able to pull our pump out. We're still kind of hanging on that hose. I don't know what you guys can see. Kind of a difficult job to record. We'll kind of wiggle that around. And just like that, we'll take our water pump out. So make sure when you're doing this job, you get yourself the OEM, the Japan one. If you're not getting OEM, get the Aisin. It's who makes it for Subaru. A lot of times these have Aisin written right on them. Oh, this is a Yamada, but sometimes they'll say Aisin right on them. And as long as it's made in Japan, you're good. Don't use any of that crap that, like from Napa, the Gates kits and the Napa branded kits or the Advanced Auto kits or the Continentals, all the Chinese garbage. You gotta have NTK bearings and Japanese water pumps. You're wasting your time if you're not using that. Our gasket stayed there, so we're gonna pull our gasket off. So there's that. And then if you are using one of the cheap Chinese kits and it doesn't come with a metal gasket, you're super duper wasting your time. Super duper, as if you can waste your time anymore. The Aisin kits are cheap. Use them. Anytime you're doing Honda, Toyota, Nissan, Subaru, any of those, Aisin. Not a sponsor. Wish they were. But the best kits on the planet. Absorb some of the coolant out of here. Clean up some of our mess where we got a little bit on the pulley. Start getting this all absorbed. Use Bounty. It's the quicker, thicker picker-upper. I don't know if that's true or not. But we're going to use this to kind of start absorbing that with some wicking action.
The thermostat you ordered?
Yes, ma'am.
He can't put his hands on it, but he can.
Mother figger!
Can get one for like $230.
Let me look here. Stand by. I feel like a total ding dong. I always order a brand new thermostat when I do these, and somehow I neglected to order the thermostat. So, of course, our local Napa here in Bath, they did not have one. And then the Advanced Auto, they've got like 13 of them in stock. That's local here. But the only one they stock is the I've got a blown head gasket, but I don't want to admit it thermostat, aka the 170 degree thermostat. These OEM use a 190. And I'm not going to put a 170 in it, so the other local parts store there, Fast Freddy's I call them, they showed one in stock. And they called to say that they can't find it. So the other place that has one in stock is the other Napa. I'm taking this gasket out of there, throw that right in the trash, because what will happen with this, it's pointless, you don't need it, and it's gonna end up getting stuck behind your water pump, and it's really gonna pee you off one day. But the other Napa has one, but they're so far away that they get all kind of pissy pants when I ask them to deliver, because it's a 20-minute drive. But then if you send in an order that's like $1,000 order, they're like, oh, I'll be there in 5 seconds. So anyhow, it gets kind of annoying. So I just sent an order to them in about 2 minutes here. The phone's probably gonna ring and they're gonna say that they can't deliver it for several hours. It is what it is, though. It's my fault, ultimately, because I forgot to order it when I put in my initial order. So I'm just going over that water pump with a carbide scraper. There's not a lot of material to remove, but we wanted to make sure that there is no foreign debris on the sealing surface here. And we just want to wipe that off. All right, so that's good. We did that. I'm gonna go get a worm style hose clamp for this hose and for the other hoses while I'm upstairs. And then I'll be back and we'll stick a new pump in there.